All right. I don't plan to take up the entire time, particularly with these. Although I could, because there's enough in here. Um, but if you guys wanted to search in the meantime for something in there, you can. So, what do you remember about the story?
It's been, to be honest with you, it's been so long
It is,
ago that,
yeah.
I mean, probably close to 40 years.
Sure.
Since
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I think Pasternak was heavily influenced by Tolstoy, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think his parents or someone related to him actually used to know Tolstoy pretty well, so he actually may have had actual contact with the author. But I won't go into the novel too much because it's kind of complicated. It covers a lot of time. There's a lot that goes on, but it is generally set in the time period of the Russian Revolution, going into World War One. So that kind of tumultuous period, and that's a lot of what he's kind of reacting against here, is the oppressive nature of that regime, specifically the Bolsheviks, and just the way that ideology was practiced in their country, and just this kind of resounding idea of these high ideals for a utopian society that ends up being an extremely oppressive, terrible place to live, which typically happens when you have those kind of socialist or communist ideas. Anyways, his poems are kind of, a lot of the poems are kind of a reaction, an emotive reaction towards that. But the story Dr. Zhivago is also definitely a love story as well. So you will definitely hear that within the poems. But for our purposes, since only Justin and I in this case have the actual background of the story, it's good for you guys to look at just the way he writes poetry, which is a little bit unconventional and really powerful. The way that he phrases things are very really well done. They're really good poems, I think. So what you guys probably can do, if I pick out a poem, you can probably look at or look it up online if you guys want to read along. So I'm trying to pick which one. Hopefully this doesn't end up being awkward, because his poems are not super easy to understand, even though they are really nice. Let's see. Let's do hold on a second.
What's his name again?
Boris Pasternak.
Mm-hmm.
This is the author's name.
How do you spell it?
Borispasternak. Yep. Let's do A Fairy Tale, is what the poem's called.
By who?
Boris Pasternak.
Thank you.
Hopefully it comes up. I don't think these are particularly popular poems, but they're nice. You guys got it? Fairy Tale?
Yep.
There's two different versions in my book. I want to make sure we're on the same one. So let me know everyone gets there. Yeah.
Wait.
Esther, do you want to read it for us?
Sure. Once, in a time forgotten, in a fairy place, through the what is it? Steep, a rider made his way apace. While he sped to battle, nearing from the dim distance a dark forest rose ahead of him. Something kept repeating, seemed his heart to graze. Tighten up the saddle, fear the watering pace. But he did not listen. Heeding but his will, at full speed, he bounded up the wooded hill. rode into a valley, turning from the mound, galloped through a meadow, skirted higher ground. Reached a gloomy hollow, found a trail to trace, down the woodland pathway to the watering place. Deaf to voice of warning, and without remorse, down the slope the rider led his thirsty horse. Where the stream grew shallow, winding through the glen, fiery flames lit up the entrance to a den. Through thick clouds of crimson, smoke above the spring, an uncanny calling made the forest ring. The rider started, and with peering eye, urged his horse in answer to the haunting cry. Then he saw the dragon, and he gripped his lance, and his horse stood breathless, fearing to advance. Thrice around the maiden was the serpent wound. Fire-breathing nostrils cast a glare around. And the dragon's body moved his scaly neck, at her shoulders snaking, whip-like forth and back. By that country's custom was a young and fair captive brought as ransom to the dragon's lair. This, then, was the tribute that the people owed to the warm protection for a poor abode. Now the dragon hugged his victim in alarm, and the coils grew tighter round her throat and arm. Skyward looked the horseman with imploring glance, and for the impending fight he couched his glance. Tightly closing eyelids, heights and cloudy spheres, rivers, waters, boulders, centuries and years. Helmetless, the wounded, lies his life at stake. With his hooves the charger tramples down the snake. On the sand together, dragon, steed, and lance, in a swoon, the rider, the maiden in a trance. Blue the sky, soft breezes, tender noon caress. Who is she? A lady? Peasant girl? Princess? Now in joyous wonder cannot cease to weep, now again abandoned to unending sleep. Now his strength returning, opens up his eyes. Now anew and wounded, limp and listless lies. But their hearts are beating, waves surge up, die down. Carry them and waken, and in slumber drown. Tightly close eyelids, heights and cloudy spheres, rivers, waters, boulders, centuries and years.
It's kind of a long one, but interesting, right?
Yeah. It's definitely a fairy tale. Yeah.
Wish I could better explain what he's actually trying to convey in the poem. Not exactly.
Interesting the way he does
Sure.
like just the two, like the and the wait. I think. Yeah, just in the last section, he does like the two repeating paragraph things.
Where he copies what he had already said.
Yeah, but like he does that in just the last
Yeah,
section.
that is an interesting part. My guess is that poem has something to convey about his experience with the female protagonist in the novel. But I won't go into depths about that because, let's see, he has some really interesting poems. Actually, they're about Jesus. It's really interesting because there's very little mention of it in the novel itself, but he conveys, I guess, because the Dr. Zhivago in the novel, he's conveyed as a really, really thoughtful person, especially later in his life. As you see in the novel, he almost is a bit of a philosopher of sorts, because he begins writing his own books, almost through this like urge he has within him just to write his thoughts and share them. And so it almost comes as a bit of a surprise that he writes what seems to be almost definitely Christian themed poems, when very little of that is actually at least directly expressed in the novel. So to give an example of that, why don't we turn to a poem series of his, it's 2 poems called Mary Magdalene. There's a part 1 and a part 2. I'm guessing they'll come together if you guys look them up.
So in a way, it's kind of like the Lord of the Rings, how it has a spiritual background, but you can't really tell unless you're looking for it.
Yeah, it's a little hard to explain. I don't think it was written in that way particularly, at least by Pasternak, but like it's kind of a hard but very interesting concept where the author's expressing his ideas through a character that's not, it's a fictional character, but obviously very realistic, that being Dr. Zhivago, who's the protagonist of the novel. And basically these poems are supposed to have been written by this main character in the story. These poems are written by someone who doesn't actually exist. So these are like part of the story.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's important without telling too much of the story with the character, Dr. Zhivago. You need to understand that he is someone who has dealt with a great amount of grief and trauma in his life. And so a lot of this poetry is like, and that was wrestling with that, the thematic of like overcoming, like the dragon obviously represents whatever in his life he perceives to be the hindrance or this great power. And as the story goes, right, there's the love interest part of it, but it's not just about redeeming the peasant girl or the princess. It's about finding redemption in himself to overcome those battles.
You see throughout the novel too, the character he writes poems during, you can see like Dr. Zhivago felt this urge during this time of his life to write poems, and they never share the poems in the book. It's not until later, when you finish the novel or while you're going through it, that you refer to the end of the book and look at the poems that this character wrote. That's why it's a really interesting concept. But you guys find it? Part 1 of Mary Magdalene?
Yeah.
Okay. Justin, you want to read that first part?
Sure. Mary Magdalene 1. As soon as night descends, we meet. Remorse my memories releases. The demons of the past complete, and draw and tear my heart to pieces. Sin, vice, and madness and deceit, when I was slave of men's caprices, and when my dwelling was the street. The deathly silent is not far, a few more moments only matter, which the inevitable bar, but at the edge before they scatter, in front of thee my life I shatter, as though an alabaster jar. Oh, what might not have been my fate, by now my teacher and my savior, did not eternity await me at the table as a late new victim of my past behavior. But what can sin now mean to me, and death and hell and sulfur burning, when like a graft into a tree I have for everyone to see, grown into being part of thee in my immeasurable yearning? When pressed against my knees I place thy precious feet and weep, despairing perhaps I'm learning to embrace the cross's rough, four-sided face, and fainting all my being sways toward thee thy burial preparing.
It's interesting, you have a completely different translation than mine. I guess mine is a part of the same translation of this particular book. I actually like mine a little better. Here, I'll read mine here. I don't know, it doesn't give me the translator's name or anything, so I guess it's kind of hard for us to find the same one. But this one's not as paced, like it doesn't have the same kind of rhyming scheme or meter as yours, but it's still pretty good. Okay. As soon as night falls, my temper is beside me. He is the debt I pay to my past. Memories of debauchery come and suck at my heart. Memories of myself, a slave to men's whims, a fool out of my mind, to whom the street will shelter. A few moments remain. Then comes the silence of the tomb. Having reached the end of the world, I break my life before you like an alabaster box. Oh, where would I be now, my teacher and my savior, if eternity did not await me at the table at night, like a new client caught in the net of my craft? But tell me, what is the meaning of sin, of death, hell, fire, and brimstone, when before the eyes of all I have grown one with you in my boundless sorrow, as the graft grows one with the tree? And perhaps, Jesus, holding your feet on my knees, I am learning to embrace the square shaft of the cross, losing consciousness as I strain your body to me, preparing you for burial. I like the more direct, succinct style of that.
Yeah.
Really beautiful poem, actually.
What exactly does alabaster mean again?
Isn't that like the
Yeah.
spices or something?
Well,
Or no, that's something
alabaster
else.
is the jar that it's actually held in. So alabaster is like a white
material it is?
Yeah, it's like a
Okay.
white
Yeah.
stone kind of.
Tyler Stone.
Yeah,
Type of
like a
rock.
really Yeah, so the jar that she breaks open is the perfumer's jar,
Yeah.
and would have been of immeasurable value because alabaster was not a common.
Yeah.
It wasn't something common. So the fact that Mary Magdalene had that, and she is, it's kind of the imagery, right? Is that she's of no value from her lifestyle, and what she possesses is far beyond any value she had. Like, I mean, that alabaster represents something that could, in the natural, she could have went and sold and lived her life in comfort, but she breaks it open before the Lord to
Yeah.
wash his feet. So it's a pretty powerful image.
Kayla, do you want to read from mine the next part?
I'll probably
You can try,
stuff
but
like
it'd be best just to listen. You can try to look though.
Okay.
Okay. Mary Magdalene. 2. Before the festival comes the spring cleaning, away from the crowd, with myrrh from a little pail. I wash your most pure feet. I feel for the sandals, I cannot find them. I see nothing through my tears. And strands of my hair cover my eyes like a veil. I have planted your feet on the hem of my skirt. Jesus, I have watered them with my tears. I have wound them round with strings of beads from my neck. I have cloaked them with my hair. I see the future in detail, as though you had stopped it. At this moment, I am able to prophesy with the foresight of Sybil. How do you? Tomorrow the veil of the temple will be torn. He will huddle together in a little group apart, and the earth will sway under our feet, perhaps out of pity for me. The columns of the guards will reform, and the horsemen will ride away, like a wind spout in a storm. The cross above my head will strain towards the sky, and I will fall at its feet. Silent and dazed, biting my lips, your arms will spread out to the ends of the cross to embrace too many. For whom in the world is your embrace so wide? For whom much torment, so much power? In the world there are In all world are there so many souls, so many lives, so many village, rivers, and woods? Those 3 days will pass, but they will push me down into such emptiness that in the frightened interval I shall grow up into the restoration. Resurrection, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just find his poetry so powerful. It's like so blunt and forceful, but piercing at the same time. Just that's what I really like about Russian authors in general, is that they're not super fancy. They're just like really direct in the way they communicate, but still very tactful and artistic at the same time. It's really beautiful. Let's see if I can just pull up one more out of the collection here, and then we can look in the other book if you guys want. Let's see. Do how about we do Hamlet, which is the first one that pulls up. Hamlet, Hamlet. It's a shorter one. It's actually probably one of my favorite ones. It's really nice.
Just took me to a film.
Make sure it's
Apparently there is a film.
say by Boris Hasselhoff.
I did.
Yeah, you don't want to get Hamlet, which is Shakespeare.
There's a film. Oh, wait. Is that it?
Yeah, it's still gonna be a different translation from mine, but we'll read both.
Russian?
You guys go first.
Wait. It
It's
says.
a tiny one.
Oh, is it this one? It says the original. Well, yeah, I think it's the one. Right?
Yeah, you can read yours, Naomi.
Okay.
Hopefully everybody has the same.
Then dies down. I enter from the wings, leaning inside the doorway to the stage. I try and catch an echo in the distance, a sense of what shall happen in my age. Thousands of theater glasses focus on me, turning on me the darkness of the night. If it be in thy power, Abba Father, pray let this cup of torment pass by me. I love thy high, unwavering conception, and have agreed to play this part as tasked. But now another drama is unfolding. So, just this once, release me from the cast. But the whole plot has been already written in journeys in
Irrevocable, I'm guessing.
irrevocably marked. I am alone. It all falls Ferris. How do you say that?
Pharisees.
Oh, Pharisees. A mortal life is no walk in the park.
It's actually an excellent poem. I'm probably gonna memorize it.
It's really nice.
You guys, I'm guessing you guys read your translation and then I'll read mine.
So there's 3 different ones.
There's probably like tons, because you guys know, probably I should have implied this when I was explaining the novel, but this was written by a Russian author, so this was written entirely in the Russian language.
Is that Russian?
In fact, he had tried to publish it during his time, but obviously the Soviet Union was still a thing then, and so they wouldn't let him. In fact, he actually was going to receive the Nobel Prize, but he rejected it because it would have basically made it where he had to be deported from his country. So this was actually published later on in Italy, I think, was where it originated. And then, yeah, it went from there. But anyways, that's why there's all these different versions, is because various people have provided their own translations of the originally Russian poem. So, Justin, why don't you read your translation?
The murmurs ebb, unto the stage I enter. I am trying, standing in the door, to discover in the distant echoes what the coming years may hold in store. The nocturnal darkness with 1,000 binoculars is focused onto me. Take away this cup, O Abba, Father. Everything is possible to thee. I am fond of this thy stubborn project, and to play my part I am content. But another drama is in progress, and this once, oh, let me be exempt. But the man of action is determined, and the end irrevocably sealed. I am alone. All round me drowns in falsehood. Life is not a walk across a field.
Yeah, I really wish I could figure out which translator I have, because the language he uses is just so good in mine. So I'm going to read it. Hamlet. It's even different from Justin's?
Yeah.
See if it's the same as mine. The noise is stilled. I come out on the stage. Leaning against the doorpost, I try to guess from the distant echo what is to happen in my lifetime. The darkness of night is aimed at me, along the sights of 1,000 opera glasses. Abba, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. I love your stubborn purpose. I consent to play my part. But now a different drama is being acted. For this once let me be. Yet the order of the acts is planned, and the end of the way inescapable. I am alone. All drowns in the Pharisees' hypocrisy. To live your life is not as simple as to cross a field. The last line there, actually, it says here in my notes, to live your life is not as simple as to cross a field, is actually a Russian proverb, which is interesting that you use in the poem there. So who is the poem talking about? He's using biblical phraseology and imagery there. At what point does this happen in the Bible? This scenario. Anyone remember? Come on now. That should be easy.
Take away this cup, O Abba, Father.
Who said that?
Jesus?
Yeah, what word did he say it? And what was about to happen?
What are you being crucified?
He was, where was he?
The girl.
This was when he was in the garden. When he had,
Gethsemane.
yeah. He had brought his disciples with him and they stayed behind and slept. And this is the point, this was the time where he was basically crying blood because of the intensity of his suffering and grief. And that was, like if you remember from that good claymation I used to watch. I don't know if you guys ever saw this, The Miracle Maker, you guys
I
saw
think
it?
that-
We have a copy of it, yeah.
You see Jesus praying and he's like, take it away. It's like this goblet that's all of a sudden surrounded by thorns. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, but this is the part that he's talking about. It'd be really interesting to know what the author's heart is behind it in writing that, because obviously this has emotional ties in context in his own life and the things that he went through too. In some ways, perhaps this was part of his contemplation of his own destiny in some light. But yeah, I think I might memorize this poem. I really like it.
What's interesting,
Yes.
because the Russian mindset with Pasternak, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, they all pull on biblical imagery. And so understanding the geography of Russia, as well as there's some tie-ins with Jewish people who were in Afghanistan, around that area. And so there was kind of historically an interplay between even Jerusalem and the Middle East now, and then the Russian ideal. And so there's a lot of like orthodoxy that is blended in between the two. And so you see in a lot of Russian writing in particular, drawing very, very heavily on what is more like a more Eastern way of perceiving Christianity or biblical truth.
Yeah.
And as Noah said, they're much more direct. The language in Russian language, it's much more like German, like it has harsher like sounds and is very like forceful. And so even in his writings, you can pick that up. It is interesting to see, although I'd imagine that's a much older translation. And so I think as we're reading each different translation, what we're seeing is translations that have changed over decades. Mm-hmm. And so the person who is translating it is trying to put it into a modern context or understanding. Right. And so you get more modern verbiage so that you can kind of place it. But I think what gets lost in our more modern verbiage is some of the real direct and powerful like points that Pasternak is attempting to make.
Right.
That would have appealed certainly to the Russian audience it was originally written for. It's very black and white. There's not as much like metaphor often, but it's very like piercing and direct.
Yeah. Just what? Sorry, go ahead. It was. Yeah, like some of my favorite wording in this particular poem, to kind of give an example of that directness, is things like, I love your stubborn purpose. It's just a really interesting wording, but I like that a lot. Okay, so you guys, Justin, I didn't know if you had any poems in mind from the book or anything. I don't have anything more to share myself.
I don't have from the book. I would like to share. I mean, you guys might have actually read it before, but I'll share my favorite poem.
Sure.
It's actually written by Rudyard Kipling. He wrote.
Is it in the book or?
It's not. You'll look it up.
It's not if. Is it?
If.
I've read that before.
Yeah. If.
Yeah.
It's by Rudyard Kipling. So Rudyard Kipling actually wrote the Jungle Book. So if you've ever seen Disney's Jungle Book, it's based off of his writing, and so he was English, but the context of that is set in India, and so it was at a time of imperialism, and so India was its own country and had its own ideals, but you had like different explorers and people coming from other countries. So like England had a lot of money, and so they inserted kind of the authority or the rule. So similar to like how the Romans ruled in Jerusalem, England ruled over India. And so he has a lot of his writings come from there, but this is it's kind of the purpose of this is about a young man growing into actually being what it means to be a man of character, a man of integrity, and the obstacles that one is faced with. So, If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give way to hating. And yet, don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat these two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, If all men count with you, but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that is in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
That's pretty good.
That one.
Hmm?
I remember that one.
Yeah.
I memorized that chunk of it.
The chunk you probably heard me say
Yeah.
more than.
Than
But obviously,
27.
he's talking about. I don't think he's setting out to be biblical at all, the author, but I find a lot of power in basically living a life that is in pursuit of something greater than oneself, and not being influenced by the culture around you, the people around you, and not giving sway to that, but living a quiet life, godly life. I think you can pull out from that.
Right.
And true manhood, being truly like mature, and I think you'll be a man. I think what that's talking about is being mature.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of, I think, a really good process, that I find really compelling. And to me, I see a lot of biblical reality in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the poem is certainly a good outline, in a sense, for mature life behavior, for sure. That's definitely what I appreciate most about it. I think they had in a video or something. I don't remember the actor's name, but they had his name is Sir Michael something.
Michael Caine.
Yeah, they had him read the poem.
Oh yeah, the way he reads it is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. Well, anyone else have any favorite poems?
Let's see. I took it out of my book. It's really small. That's the one I memorized. I can read it right now.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see if it has the actual poem though.
I think it's by.
That one?
Yeah.
Kayla has one called "I Sat by the Sea."
By
Okay.
Ivy O. Eastwick. By who?
It might be harder to find.
Ivy.
I can,
Ivy O. Eastwick.
Eastwick is the last name. It's a really short.
Yeah.
What was the poem's name again? Sorry.
I Sat by the Sea.
Okay.
You'll memorize this one, huh? You want me to test you? I'll let you look.
Definitely, and then if I can work
Yeah.
it.
that's fine. You guys find it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I sat by the sea, it called and cried, it spluttered and splashed along the harbor side. It rocked and rolled, it rose and fell, it tossed up sponge and weed and shell. I took them all three home, my dear, with the spray in my eyes and the sound in my ears.
Nice.
You memorize that? Yeah, nice.
It's because you like.
I can see from the source that I got it from. Looks like you got it from The Good and the Beautiful. Nice.
Oh yeah, that's what I was wondering about this.
Yeah, that's a nice little poem.
Why do you like it so much?
They have a bunch of kids, or they have a bunch of YouTube videos of kids that memorized it on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is it because you love the ocean
Probably.
and the beach?
It's like, that was my favorite one out of that book.
Nice.
Interesting.
Oh, we can probably, if you guys don't have any more poems y'all want to share, we can probably wrap it up a little early today. We're gonna have to figure out a more said before we wrap it up, we probably should figure out a better way to structure our poetry time, because this book doesn't really seem to be serving us too well, even though we all spent a bunch of money on it.
Yeah.
Got 3 different
It's a bunch of,
I kind of liked doing what's her name's poems. I don't know why we stopped doing.
well, I don't know. We still have her book, so we could
Yeah.
maybe bring that back. Mention it to Emmanuel. I don't know. When are y'all's essay due?
2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably do something like that.
So we'll still have next week to read more poems, and then the week after that we'll be reading the essays. All right.